Anything you think you know about Lucifer? It's not even half the story. This is the most complete account ever told of the greatest fall in universal history, from divine glory to eternal curse. For the first time, we're breaking down Lucifer's story in unprecedented detail. Forget what you've heard about some one-dimensional devil. We're diving deep into the complex psyche of a being whose internal struggles led to the most dramatic transformation in celestial history. What could possibly turn God's masterpiece into the source of all evil? Listen, I'm not just pulling this from thin air. This deep dive comes from intense study of multiple authoritative sources, original biblical texts, St. Augustine's theological masterpieces, and Father Jose Antonio Fortea's groundbreaking work, History of the Angelic World. And yeah, I've had direct consultations with Vatican theological experts who've shared insights that'll blow your mind. By the end of this video, you're not just going to understand where evil came from, you're going to see patterns that repeat themselves in human nature every single day. We're talking about real, practical lessons about pride and its consequences. More importantly, you'll learn to spot the warning signs of how pride can destroy even the most perfect things in your life. This isn't just some ancient history lesson, it's a mirror reflecting the choices we face every day. So let's cut through the myths and get to the real story, starting from a time before evil even existed. Lucifer, initial glory. Let me take you back to a time that'll blow your mind, before darkness was even a thing, before evil had a name. Picture this, heaven, but not your typical fluffy clouds and harps scene. We're talking about a place absolutely lit up with pure, infinite light, every single particle vibrating with divine energy. And right there, at the center of it all, Lucifer. And trust me, his name, Lightbringer, wasn't just for show. You think you've seen beauty? Let me tell you about Lucifer. This guy was so stunning that other angels, literal celestial beings, would stop dead in their tracks just to catch a glimpse. His light didn't just shine, it straight up performed symphonies. Every move he made, pure poetry in motion. And those wings? Imagine the most brilliant light you've ever seen, then multiply it by infinity. That's just scratching the surface. But here's the real kicker. Lucifer wasn't just a pretty face. This guy had brains that would make Einstein look like a rookie. When he spoke, even the highest-ranking angels would crowd around like New Yorkers at a hot dog stand, hanging on every word. He could break down the most complex divine concepts like he was explaining yesterday's baseball game. In heaven's corporate structure, Lucifer was basically the CEO, right under God himself. Picture the world's greatest conductor leading an orchestra of millions of angels, each one with a voice that would make Broadway stars weep. The music they created, it would make Morgan Hall sound like amateur hour. Everyone wanted to be in Lucifer's inner circle. Even Michael, yeah, that Michael, the warrior angel, would come to him for advice. The seraphim and cherubim, heaven's heavy hitters, would pause their eternal duties just to watch him work. He was God's masterpiece, no doubt about it, like the crown jewels of creation, but infinitely more valuable. But what really set him apart was his connection with the big guy himself. Lucifer was God's first creation. Imagine being the prototype for all celestial beings, crafted by the Creator's own hands. He had a corner office right next to God's throne, basking in that divine light, handling heaven's most classified information. When Lucifer walked through heaven's halls, he lit up the place brighter than Times Square on New Year's Eve. When he spoke, everyone knew it came with God's seal of approval. He was the morning star of heaven. Think of the brightest star you've ever seen, then crank that up to 11. Here's where it gets interesting, folks. While Lucifer was living large, ruling the roost in all his glory, something unprecedented was brewing. Even as he was leading heaven's greatest hits, nobody, and I mean nobody, could have predicted what was coming next. But you know what they say in the Big Apple, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. What happens when perfection starts questioning its own existence? When divine beauty gets a little too self-aware? Stick around, because we're about to see how heaven's brightest star went from leading the celestial choir to orchestrating the biggest rebellion in cosmic history, the seeds of pride. Picture this. Heaven in all its glory, and at its highest point stands Lucifer, shining brighter than a supernova. Yeah, we're talking about that moment, when everything was still perfect, or so it seemed. Look, it started small, real small. Just a thought, barely a flicker in that brilliant mind of his. Damn, my light is something else. Now, most wouldn't think twice about a thought like that, but in paradise, that's like dropping a match in pure oxygen. You see, Lucifer's got this gig, conducting heaven's choir. We're not talking about your local church choir here. This is the celestial A-team, voices that could make stars dance. And man, does he do it well. Too well, maybe. Because while everyone else is focused on praising the big guy upstairs, Lucifer starts noticing something different. How they all look at him. Get this, Gabriel, sharp as ever, picks up on it first. He catches Lucifer during one of these performances and something's off. The way Lucifer carries himself? It's not just confidence anymore. It's like he's not just conducting the show, he's becoming the show. Hey, brother, Gabriel pulls him aside one day, real concerned, you know. Your light, it's different lately. And Lucifer? He hits back with this smile that would have won him an Oscar. Ever wonder why some of us shine brighter than others, Gabriel? Just drops it there like a bomb in a beauty pageant. Days roll by, if time even works like that in heaven, and things start shifting. The choir? Still perfect. But now it's like watching a Broadway star who's started believing their own publicity. Lucifer's throwing in these dramatic pauses, making it more about the performance than the praise. Here's where it gets real. Lucifer starts having these private little chats with himself. If I'm this bright, this perfect, you can see where this is heading, right? Maybe I'm meant for something bigger. But the real kicker? The moment everything changes, picture this. Massive celestial gathering. Everyone's there, the whole heavenly host doing their thing. And right in the middle of it all, Lucifer just stops. Wings spread out like he's center stage at Madison Square Garden, soaking up the spotlight instead of reflecting it where it belongs. Let me tell you something. In heaven's perfect harmony, that silence hit harder than a New York minute. That's when the first crack appeared. Not some dramatic lightning bolt from above, nah, this was subtler. Like watching the first hairline fracture in the Empire State Building's foundation. One perfect note in heaven's symphony just went flat. Here's the thing about pride. It's sneaky. It doesn't kick down your front door announcing itself. It slips in through the mail slot, looking all innocent, wearing its Sunday best. And Lucifer? He had the perfect setup for pride's grand entrance. All those gifts, the beauty, the brains, the talent, turned out to be like having premium gasoline for a fire you never meant to start. But hold on to your halos, folks, because this is just the warm-up act. Heaven's about to drop the mother of all revelations, and Lucifer's newfound pride, it's about to go toe-to-toe with the biggest test in celestial history. Think cosmic heavyweight championship, with the fate of everything hanging in the balance, the turning point. The revelation of Jesus, heaven held its breath. In this moment of perfect stillness, God gathered all his angels, from the highest seraphim to the smallest guardian angels. The air crackled with anticipation as the Creator prepared to share something unprecedented, something that would shake the very foundations of celestial order. Lucifer stood at the forefront, his radiance outshining all others. His presence commanded attention, his beauty unmatched among the heavenly host. But what he was about to hear would challenge everything he believed about his position in God's creation. I will create a material universe. God's voice resonated through the heavens, each word carrying the weight of divine purpose. The assembled angels watched in awe as visions of galaxies, stars, and planets unfolded before them, a cosmic dance of creation yet to come. But this was merely the prelude. And on one special world, Earth, I will create beings in my own image. The announcement sent ripples of wonder through the angelic ranks. But God wasn't finished. His next words would change everything. I myself will become flesh. My Son will take human form, Jesus Christ, and you, my angels, shall worship me in this human form." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucifer's perfect features froze in disbelief. Him, the morning star, the most beautiful of all angels, bow before a creature of flesh and blood? The very thought sent shockwaves through his being. But there was more. God revealed that humanity would fall into corruption, and he would sacrifice himself through crucifixion to redeem them. The image of the Creator of the universe, bloodied and humiliated on a cross, was more than Lucifer could bear. In that moment, something cracked within the morning star. His mind raced with questions that felt like poison. Why them? Why not me? I, who have served perfectly since the beginning of time, must bow before these lesser beings? Pride, that silent serpent, began to coil around his heart. The other angels erupted in praise, seeing the profound beauty in God's plan. But Lucifer remained still, his inner light dimming with each passing second. His silence spoke volumes in a realm where praise was constant. Watch him closely now. See how his wings slightly fold inward, how his radiance flickers like a candle in the wind. This is the moment when the first shadow ever cast in heaven appeared, not on the ground, but in an angel's heart. Then came the breaking point. God asked all angels to kneel before this future vision of Christ. One by one they bowed, seraphim, cherubim, all ranks of heaven touching their foreheads to the crystal floor. Lucifer stood, and in that defiant stance, everything changed. The perfect harmony of heaven cracked like glass under pressure. The morning star's light, once so pure, took on a different quality, harder, colder, like sunlight reflecting off ice. No. The word escaped his lips, barely a whisper but carrying the weight of an earthquake. It was the first no ever spoken in heaven, and its echo still resonates through creation today. He looked at God, his Creator, his Father, and for the first time saw him as something else, a rival. "I will not bow," he declared, his voice carrying that terrible new quality called defiance. "Not to this human form." And thus began the great division. What started as a single moment of pride would soon escalate into heaven's first and greatest war. But before the battles would rage, before the fall, Lucifer had one more card to play, and his next move would shake the foundations of heaven itself. The rebellion. How heaven's greatest star became its greatest threat. At first it was barely a whisper in the celestial halls. Lucifer, heaven's most radiant angel, began holding private conversations in the quiet corners of paradise. His words, though soft, carried a magnetic power that made others lean in close. "Have you ever wondered," he'd ask, his voice like silk over steel, "why we must bow to something lesser?" The morning star wasn't crude in his rebellion. No, he was brilliant, strategic. He approached the brightest angels first, those whose light nearly matched his own. In intimate gatherings, he'd pose questions that seemed innocent but planted seeds of doubt. Aren't we beings of pure light, worthy of more? Should we diminish ourselves before flesh and blood? His charisma worked like a subtle poison. Angels who had spent eternities in perfect devotion found themselves nodding along. Lucifer's logic was seductive. God gave us free will, didn't he? So why not exercise it? Why not reach for something more? His arguments weren't filled with hate or obvious malice. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he spoke of dignity, of fulfilling their true potential. The rebellion grew like a shadow at sunset, slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it suddenly seemed to darken everything. A third of heaven's host began gathering in secret, drawn by Lucifer's vision of a new order. These weren't lesser angels, mind you. These were the elite, the beautiful, the wise, those in whom God had invested the most power and glory. Then came the moment that shook heaven's foundations. In one of these clandestine meetings, Lucifer finally revealed his full intention. "If God won't grant us our rightful place," he declared, his voice resonating with terrible certainty, "then we shall take it." The assembled angels gasped, not in horror but in awe. His light, once warm and inviting, now burned with a cold, terrible purpose. But heaven had its defenders. Michael, smaller in stature and lower in rank than many present, stood forward. What happened next would be forever etched in celestial history. In a voice that cut through Lucifer's elaborate arguments like a sword through silk, Michael uttered 3 simple words: "Who is like God?" The simplicity of Michael's challenge struck like lightning. No elaborate philosophy, no complex argumentation, just a pure truth that exposed the hollowness of Lucifer's rebellion. The morning star's face contorted with rage. How dare this lesser angel challenge him? But Michael stood firm, his smaller frame somehow seeming to grow as he faced down heaven's most powerful angel. "You're arrogant, Lucifer," Michael declared, his voice carrying to every corner of heaven. "Your light has become a shadow trying to eclipse its own source. Can't you see? You've placed yourself above the very one who gave you your glory." The confrontation split heaven itself. Angels who had been brothers since the dawn of creation now found themselves on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. The air itself seemed to crackle with tension as angels made their choice: to stand with Michael's simple truth or fall for Lucifer's grand deception. As the lines were drawn and sides were chosen, heaven trembled on the brink of the first war it had ever known. The stage was set for a battle that would shake the very foundations of creation, a conflict that would transform the morning star into the prince of darkness and change the nature of good and evil forever. The celestial war. The battle erupted with an intensity that shattered the very foundations of paradise. Heaven, once a realm of eternal peace, transformed into a battlefield that would define the fate of creation itself. Picture this: waves of light clashing against shadows, each impact sending shockwaves through the cosmos. On one side stood Lucifer, no longer the morning star but something darker, his beauty twisted by pride. His wings, once golden with divine light, now cast shadows that seemed to devour the very air around him. Behind him, a third of heaven's host, the brightest, the most powerful angels, their halos dimmed by rebellion. Each of these fallen warriors had been master of their celestial arts, their light rivaling the stars themselves. "I was first," Lucifer's voice thundered across the heavenly plains. "I am the true light." But his words rang hollow, echoing with the emptiness of pride. His army moved like a dark tide, their former glory transformed into weapons of destruction. Facing them stood Michael, smaller in stature but burning with unshakable faith. Picture David facing Goliath, but on a cosmic scale. His armor wasn't adorned with precious stones like Lucifer's, it shone with simple, pure, divine light. Behind him, the loyal angels stood firm, their weapons forged not of celestial metal, but of unwavering devotion. The clash was beyond anything creation had witnessed. When angelic swords met, galaxies trembled. Each wing beat created hurricanes of light and shadow. The heavenly spheres themselves seemed to hold their breath as their guardians turned against each other. But here's what made this battle truly extraordinary. It wasn't just fought with weapons and power. This was a battle of ideals, of choices. Every angel had to decide, stand with pride or bow in humility. The very concept of loyalty was being redefined in real time. Michael's battle cry, "Who is like God?" wasn't just a shout, it was truth, crystallized into words, cutting through Lucifer's elaborate arguments like a divine blade. This simple phrase became a weapon more powerful than any celestial sword, reminding every angel of their true purpose. The tide turned when Michael's sword, empowered by divine justice, struck Lucifer. The blow didn't just hit Lucifer's physical form, it struck at the very core of his pride. For the first time since creation, the morning star felt fear. His perfect features contorted in shock as he realized that his rebellion, built on the foundation of pride, the fall was spectacular and terrible. Lucifer and his followers weren't just defeated, they were cast out. Imagine a third of the stars in the sky suddenly plummeting, their light turning to smoke as they fell. The rebel angels transformed as they fell, their divine beauty twisting into forms that reflected their corrupted hearts. Heaven fell silent. The victory was complete, but not joyous. Angels who had fought side by side since the dawn of creation were now eternally separated. The scars of this battle would never fully heal, a reminder that even in perfection, choice and consequence are eternal partners. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. As Lucifer, now Satan, crashed into the depths with his fallen host, a new chapter in the cosmic story was about to unfold. His war against heaven would take a new form, and his next target would be God's newest creation. This battle, fought before time as we know it, set the stage for the eternal struggle between good and evil. It reminds us that the greatest battles aren't always fought with weapons, but with choices that define not just who we are, but who we choose to become. Consequences and influence, the ripples of heaven's greatest war. In the aftermath of the celestial battle, heaven wasn't just different, it was transformed. Imagine a perfect crystal palace suddenly cracked, its flawless surface forever marked by the memory of betrayal. The angels who remained loyal stood in stunned silence, their light dimmed by a sorrow they'd never known before. This wasn't just loss. It was the first experience of grief in paradise. The silence, ancient texts tell us, was deafening. Where once the harmonious choirs of angels had filled every corner with praise, now there were gaps in the chorus, empty spaces where fallen brothers and sisters had once stood. Michael, still holding his blazing sword, looked around at the scattered remnants of battle, his victory tinged with an unfamiliar bitterness. But the impact on heaven was just the beginning. Like ripples in a cosmic pond, Lucifer's fall set in motion events that would reshape the entire universe, the transformation of paradise. The remaining angels gathered in smaller groups, their whispered conversations echoing through heaven's halls. How could this happen? They asked each other. How could light become darkness? Even the seraphim, highest of all angels, seemed shaken. Their usually perfect formation around God's throne now showed visible gaps, stark reminders of those who had chosen pride over loyalty. God's response was both powerful and poignant. Instead of immediately filling the void left by the fallen angels, he allowed the emptiness to remain, a permanent reminder of the cost of pride and the reality of free will. The scars in heaven became teaching moments, sacred spaces where new angels would learn about the danger of placing oneself above divine love, the birth of opposition. But while heaven mourned, something far more sinister was taking shape in the depths below. Lucifer, now Satan, wasn't content to simply accept his fall. His transformation from the morning star to the Prince of Darkness came with a terrible new purpose. If he couldn't have heaven, he'd create his own kingdom, a dark mirror image of the paradise he'd lost. In the abyss, Satan gathered his fallen angels, their once brilliant light now twisted into shadows. "We may have lost heaven," he declared, his voice carrying an echo of his former majesty, "but we haven't lost our power. If we can't rise to the throne, we'll build our..." The garden and the first strike then came humanity, God's new creation made in his own image. For Satan, this was both an insult and an opportunity. In the Garden of Eden, he saw his chance for revenge. The serpent's temptation of Eve wasn't just about making humans sin. It was Satan's attempt to prove that God's love for these new creatures was misplaced. The moment Eve bit into the forbidden fruit, reality itself seemed to shudder. This wasn't just a simple act of disobedience. It was the introduction of sin into the physical world, the corruption of God's perfect creation. Satan had found his weapon. If he couldn't defeat God directly, he'd strike at what God loved most. The eternal battle begins. From that moment on, human history became a battlefield in a cosmic war. Every temptation, every moment of doubt, every act of pride became an echo of that first rebellion in heaven. Satan and his fallen angels worked tirelessly to separate humanity from their Creator, using the same weapons that had led to their own fall: pride, doubt, and the desire to be equal to God. But this cosmic battle wasn't just about past events. It was about to enter a new phase, one that would bring both heaven and hell directly into human history. As the centuries rolled on, both sides prepared for confrontations that would shake the foundations of faith itself. The final battle. When darkness meets its end, picture this. The world stands on the edge of time itself. The skies, once familiar, now burn with an otherworldly glow. This isn't just another chapter. It's the final showdown, the moment every prophecy has been pointing to since Lucifer first said no in heaven. John, the writer of Revelation, sees it all unfold like a cosmic IMAX movie. Satan, no longer the beautiful Lucifer but now a monstrous dragon, gathers his forces for one last desperate attempt to prove he was right all along. This isn't your typical battle. We're talking about the ultimate fight between light and darkness, good and evil, creator and created. The scene is apocalyptic. Armies of demons darkening the skies, their wings blocking out the sun. Satan, that ancient serpent, now appears in his true form, the great dragon, his beauty long gone, replaced by the horror of his corruption. His eyes, once filled with heaven's light, now burn with the fires of 1,000 hells. This is the being who once led heaven's choirs, now conducting an orchestra of chaos. But here's where it gets interesting. Satan's not just fighting with brute force. No, he's playing his oldest game, deception. He raises up the beast and the false prophet, creating a twisted trinity that mocks everything holy. It's like he's saying, see, I can create too. I can be like God. The irony? He's still playing out the same old pride that got him kicked out of heaven in the first place. The world gets divided. Some people buy into Satan's greatest con, the idea that rebellion against God equals freedom. Others stand firm, remembering the lessons of ages past. The tension builds like a heavyweight championship fight, where the whole universe is the arena. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Remember Michael, that humble archangel who first stood up to Lucifer? He steps forward again, but this time he's not alone. Heaven opens, and out rides a figure on a white horse, Jesus himself, no longer the humble carpenter but the King of Kings. His eyes blaze with divine fire, and his sword is the truth that cuts through every lie Satan ever told. The battle? It's both epic and anticlimactic. Satan, for all his power and pride, finds out what we've known all along. He's just a created being facing his creator. One word from Christ's mouth and all Satan's armies scatter like dust in a hurricane. The dragon, who once thought he could outshine God, is captured with a simple command. Here's the kicker. Satan gets thrown into the lake of fire. But it's not just any fire, it's the ultimate expression of justice and truth. Everything he built on lies and pride just crumbles. Game over. The deceiver finally faces the one thing he can't twist or manipulate, reality itself. But there's more to this ending than just cosmic justice. It's a wake-up call for all of us. Every time we let pride whisper, "You could be like God," in our ears, we're replaying that first rebellion. The difference? We still have time to choose differently. But this final battle isn't just about how evil ends. It's about why good always wins. It's not because good is stronger in terms of power. No. Good wins because it's real, while evil is just a shadow, a parasite that can't exist without the light it tries to block. The story wraps up not just Satan's fate, but the whole cosmic drama that started with one angel's pride. It's a reminder that in the end, truth doesn't need fancy arguments or massive armies. It just needs to be what it is, truth. And speaking of truth, those 5 prophecies in Revelation, they tell us even more about how this cosmic drama affects our world right now. But that's another story. And there you have it, the most complete story of the greatest fall in the history of existence. But here's the real question that's going to keep you up tonight. If the brightest angel in heaven could fall through pride, what makes us think we're immune? Look around. Every day we face the same choice Lucifer faced: to embrace humility or let pride consume us. The same whispers that seduced him still echo in our world. You deserve more. Why should you submit? You could be great. Here's where things get personal. I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me, when have you seen pride destroy something beautiful in your life? What warning signs do you recognize from Lucifer's story in our modern world? Trust me, your perspective isn't just welcome, it's crucial for this conversation. And if you think this story was mind-blowing, hold on to your seats. Next week, we're diving into the 5 prophecies in Revelation that show how Lucifer's fall directly impacts your life today. Yeah, you heard that right. This story isn't just ancient history, it's your story too. But hey, let's be real for a second. I can't thank you enough for sticking with me through this deep dive. Seriously, you're the reason I can keep bringing these hidden truths to light. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Remember, understanding Lucifer's fall isn't just about knowing history, it's about protecting your own future. The choice he faced is the same choice we face every day. Will we let pride blind us, or will we choose to see the truth? This is Biblical Mysteries, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious, stay humble, and keep searching for truth.